A flight attendant denies a black woman a menu, but she calls the airline's CEO and turns the tables on them all. This is the story of how one woman's quiet determination exposed discrimination at 30,000 feet. Sophia Daniels wasn't looking for confrontation when she boarded the flight. She simply expected to be treated with dignity. What unfolded, however, would shake the airline to its core and hold those accountable who thought their behavior would go unchecked. Before we dive into this incredible story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. If you love stories of courage, resilience, and justice, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more compelling tales. Your support helps us share these important stories far and wide. The buzz of activity at Evergreen Airport surrounded Sophia as she adjusted the strap of her leather tote on her shoulder. She stood with a quiet poise, her tailored emerald green blazer and matching slacks a testament to her professional demeanor. Her natural curls framed her face beautifully, like a crown, and her deep brown eyes scanned the boarding gate with a practiced serenity. This wasn't Sophia's first flight, nor would it be her last, but something about today felt different. A tension that she could feel in the air. Sophia was no stranger to the subtle shifts in energy when people saw her. Was it the way she carried herself? Or was it something she couldn't change? Her heritage? Her skin? She handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, who paused for just a second longer than usual. Barely noticeable to most, but Sophia had long since learned to read micro-expressions. The hesitation, the forced recovery, the slight narrowing of the eyes, it was all there. "Welcome aboard, Miss Daniels," the agent finally said, her smile thin and rehearsed as she gestured toward the jet bridge. Sophia returned the smile, guarded but polite. She had learned to pick her battles, and this wasn't one. At least not yet. As Sophia stepped onto the plane, the rush of cool air conditioning greeted her. The first-class cabin stretched before her, a vision of modern luxury. The passengers were already settled in, business travelers glued to their tablets, and a young couple quietly laughing over glasses of champagne. Sophia walked to seat 1A, her heels clicking softly on the plush carpet. A blonde flight attendant, polished and professional, moved aside to let Sophia pass. But her gaze lingered a second too long, her expression sharp and cold rather than curious. Sophia felt the jab of that gaze, like a needle prick, but she kept her face calm and her movements graceful as she slid into her seat. First class was supposed to be a refuge of comfort, but Sophia could feel the subtle unease in the cabin. The stolen glances, the whispers, they all carried the same unspoken question. Does she belong here? Sophia adjusted her seatbelt and tucked her bag neatly at her feet, reaching for her phone to check emails. As a corporate consultant specializing in ethics and diversity initiatives, her schedule was relentless. But it was work she believed in. It wasn't just about policy, it was about ensuring the powerful were held accountable. A faint smile crossed Sophia's lips as she thought about the meeting awaiting her at her destination. She was on her way to finalize a groundbreaking deal, a partnership that would redefine ethical practices for airlines. It felt almost poetic that she was flying with one of the very airlines she planned to reform. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. The blonde flight attendant was distributing menus, her practiced smile and warm tone flowing effortlessly as she handed them out. Sophia watched her anticipation grow as the attendant neared her row. The attendant handed a menu to the older gentleman seated directly across from Sophia, exchanging cheerful pleasantries. Then, without so much as glancing at Sophia, she turned and walked away. Sophia blinked, momentarily stunned. Her gaze shifted around the cabin, noting how every other first-class passenger held a menu except her. The familiar sting of exclusion tightened her chest, but she inhaled deeply, steadying herself. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and sadly, it probably wouldn't be the last. "Excuse me," Sophia called out, her voice calm but firm. The flight attendant stopped, turning with an expression Sophia couldn't quite place. Was it annoyance? Fear? "Yes," the attendant replied, her smile now brittle and strained. Annoyance or fear, it was hard to tell. "Yes?" the blonde flight attendant replied, her brittle smile barely concealing something sharper beneath. "I believe you missed me," Sophia said, her tone polite but edged with quiet authority. She gestured to the menus in the attendant's hand. The woman hesitated, her expression tightening. "Oh, we're running low on copies," she said, her voice dripping with a forced sweetness. "I'll see if I can find one for you." Sophia nodded, her face a mask of calm, though frustration simmered beneath the surface. She watched the attendant walk away without urgency, the false smile vanishing the moment her back was turned. Sophia leaned back in her seat, her fingers curling around her phone. She wasn't just another passenger to be dismissed, but for now, she would wait. Let them think she was passive, complacent. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The soft glow of the cabin light illuminated Sophia's poised figure. She sat still, the hum of the engines filling the silence. Her mind raced with a storm of emotions, but outwardly, she remained composed. Years of experience had taught her this: how to carry herself with dignity even when every fiber of her being wanted to erupt. She wasn't new to microaggressions, those subtle attempts to erase her presence. But no matter how familiar, the sting never faded. The minutes dragged on, turning into what felt like hours. The flight attendant didn't return with a menu. Sophia busied herself with her phone, scrolling through work emails and preparing for the critical meeting awaiting her at her destination. But she couldn't focus on the words. The energy in the cabin was off, disjointed. She could feel the occasional glances from other passengers, curious, uneasy, or both. A soft chime signaled the start of the meal service. Sophia watched as the attendants rolled out the food carts, their movements smooth and efficient. Plates were placed before each passenger with cheerful descriptions of the options. The balding man seated across from Sophia, dressed in an ill-fitted suit, laughed heartily as the blonde flight attendant bantered with him while serving his meal. But Sophia's tray table remained folded away. No menu, no options. The same attendant eventually reached her row. Sophia straightened in her seat, her calm gaze meeting the woman's. This time there was no pretense of warmth in the attendant's expression. "We only have one option left," the flight attendant said, her tone clipped. "Chicken or vegetarian?" Sophia arched an eyebrow. "I wasn't given a menu," she replied evenly. "I'd like to know what's in the dishes before deciding." The attendant's lips pressed into a thin line. "The chicken has a cream sauce, and the vegetarian is pasta with vegetables," she said dismissively, offering none of the elaborate descriptions given to others. Sophia's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "I'll take the chicken," she said, refusing to let her frustration show. The plate was placed before her with a muted thud, the movement teetering on the edge of rudeness. Without another word, the attendant walked away. Sophia glanced at the dish. The presentation was lackluster, a stark contrast to the elegant meals served to her fellow passengers. She picked up her fork but found herself unable to eat. Instead, she leaned back in her seat, her eyes scanning the cabin. A few passengers had noticed the exchange. Some quickly looked away when her gaze met theirs, their discomfort evident. One woman, seated a few rows back, offered Sophia a fleeting apologetic smile, before lowering her eyes, almost embarrassed to have shown sympathy. Sophia set her fork down. This wasn't just about a menu or a meal. It was about being deliberately made to feel out of place, small, unwelcome. The quiet cruelty of it simmered in her chest, but Sophia Daniels was not the kind to back down. Her phone buzzed, drawing her attention. A message from her assistant confirmed the details for her upcoming meeting. Sophia tapped out a quick response, her fingers precise, masking the tremble of indignation she felt creeping in. This meeting wasn't just important, it was pivotal. And now the airline she was about to partner with was offering her a first-hand view of exactly what needed reforming. The meal service continued, the quiet clink of utensils and low murmurs filling the cabin. Sophia's plate remained untouched as she stared out the window. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson. The beauty outside was a sharp contrast to the tension within. Her thoughts were interrupted by the approach of another flight attendant. This one was younger, with dark hair pulled back into a tight bun. She moved cautiously, her steps hesitant as she neared Sophia's seat. "Is everything okay, ma'am?" the attendant asked softly, her tone genuine. Sophia turned to her, her expression unreadable. "Not quite," she replied calmly, her voice steady but edged with an unmistakable resolve. Sophia's expression remained calm, unreadable. I wasn't given the same level of service as the other passengers, she said, her words carefully measured. Do you think that's acceptable? The younger flight attendant flushed deeply, her cheeks turning a bright red. I'm sorry, she stammered. I'll check on that right away. Sophia nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering as she watched the woman retreat to the galley. A faint flicker of satisfaction crossed her face. She hadn't needed to raise her voice or make a scene to make her point. But satisfaction wasn't enough, not yet. Moments later, the blonde flight attendant returned. Her expression was tight, her smile gone. She leaned down, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I don't appreciate being spoken about to my colleagues, she said, her tone laced with condescension. If there was an issue, you could have addressed it with me directly. Sophia tilted her head slightly, her composure unshaken. I did, she replied smoothly. You didn't seem interested in resolving it. The attendant straightened abruptly, clearly thrown off by Sophia's poised response. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Sophia exhaled slowly, steadying herself. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But she knew better than to react with anger. She had something far more powerful. Leverage. Adjusting her blazer, she leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes, letting the steady hum of the engines drown out the disquiet of the cabin. This flight might be uncomfortable, but it would also serve as the spark for change. They didn't know who she was yet. But they would. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane reached its cruising altitude. Outside, the night stretched endlessly, a blanket of stars scattered across the inky black sky. Sophia remained motionless, her hands folded neatly in her lap. To an observer, she appeared perfectly at ease, but inside, a storm brewed. The blonde flight attendant passed by her row again, this time without so much as a glance in Sophia's direction. It wasn't just avoidance, it was a deliberate attempt to erase her presence. Sophia followed the attendant with her eyes, noting the overly polite exchanges she had with other passengers. There was no doubt now, this was personal. Her fingers brushed against her phone, resting on the tray table. She didn't need to scroll through her contacts to find the number she was thinking of. It was etched into her memory, a direct line to Arthur Grayson, the CEO of Aurora Air. She had worked with him closely over the past year. Sophia could call now, but she hesitated. Timing was everything. This needed to be precise, calculated, a lesson that wouldn't be dismissed as a one-off incident. She would wait for the right moment to strike. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Excuse me, miss?" Sophia looked up to see the man seated across from her. He was older, with a kind face lined with deep creases. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "I couldn't help but notice how they've been treating you," he said cautiously. "It's not right." Sophia tilted her head, studying him. There was no malice in his words, only genuine concern. For a moment she considered brushing him off, but something in his earnest expression stopped her. "Thank you," she replied softly. "It's not the first time." The man's brow furrowed in discomfort. "You shouldn't have to deal with this," he said, shaking his head. "It's disgraceful." Sophia offered him a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Disgraceful," she repeated. "Yes, it is." The conversation ended there, but the man's words lingered in Sophia's mind. She wasn't alone in noticing the blatant discrimination, and that knowledge emboldened her resolve. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was real, and it needed to be addressed. The voice of a flight attendant crackled over the intercom, announcing the start of the in-flight entertainment. Sophia barely registered the words. Her mind was elsewhere, already planning her next move. She picked up her phone, scrolling through her notes app. With each passing minute, she documented every detail of the encounter. Timestamps, direct quotes, even the names on the name tags she had managed to catch. This wasn't just about her anymore. Sophia knew that if she let this slide, it would happen again to someone else. Someone who might not have the resources or the voice to fight back. She couldn't let that happen. Another flight attendant approached her row. This one was a man, middle-aged, with salt and pepper hair and a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Miss Daniels, is there anything I can assist you with?" he asked, his tone overly cheerful. Sophia glanced at him, her expression unreadable. She had seen this tactic before, Send someone new to defuse the situation without actually addressing the problem. It was transparent at best. No, she replied coolly. I don't believe you can. The attendant blinked, momentarily at a loss, before retreating down the aisle. Sophia watched him go, her gaze steady. She wasn't going to be ignored. Not anymore. I'd like to speak to your lead flight attendant, Sophia said calmly, her voice measured. The male attendant blinked, his polite smile faltering. I believe she's busy at the moment, he replied. But I'd be happy to assist. I wasn't asking for your assistance, Sophia interrupted, her tone firm yet controlled. I'd like to speak to her now. The man's discomfort was evident as he nodded, quickly retreating down the aisle. Sophia watched him go, her gaze steady and unrelenting, for she wouldn't be ignored any longer. Minutes passed before the blonde flight attendant reappeared, her expression tightly controlled, her posture stiff. Is there a problem? She asked, her tone clipped. Sophia looked up, her calm demeanor unshaken. Yes, she said simply. There is. The attendant's jaw tightened, but she didn't reply. Sophia gestured to the untouched plate on her tray table. This isn't the standard of service I've come to expect from Horizon Airways, she said, her words sharp and deliberate. Your behavior has been disappointing. The flight attendant's cheeks flushed, but she stood her ground. I'm sorry you feel that way, she replied icily. We do our best to accommodate all our passengers. Sophia raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Your best? Is that what you call skipping me during meal service, refusing to provide a menu, and then serving me something subpar without so much as an apology? The attendant opened her mouth to respond but quickly closed it again, glancing around as though searching for an escape. When none came, she muttered, I'll make a note of your feedback. Sophia leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing. Do that, she said evenly, and make sure it reaches the right people. The flight attendant hurried away, her composure beginning to crack. Sophia leaned back, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. The CEO's number stared back at her, a stark reminder of the influence she carried. But she didn't press it. Not yet. Timing was everything, and Sophia knew better than to act out of frustration. Justice, she thought, was best served cold. The soft glow of her phone illuminated her composed face in the dimly lit cabin. She reread her notes carefully, ensuring every detail was recorded. Each word, each action, precisely documented. This was a quiet act of defiance against the indignity she had been subjected to. The flight continued its steady hum, masking the simmering tension. The blonde flight attendant had vanished into the galley, her absence noticeable. Occasionally, Sophia caught glimpses of her whispering to another crew member, stealing furtive glances in her direction. Sophia tapped her fingers lightly against the armrest. She appeared relaxed, her posture poised, but her mind remained sharp, cataloging every detail. She noticed the younger flight attendant, the one who had seemed genuinely concerned, moving about the cabin. The woman's gaze flickered toward Sophia briefly before she quickly turned away, her expression troubled. Sophia sighed softly, her gaze shifting to the window. The vast darkness of the night sky stretched endlessly, broken only by the faint blinking of the plane's wing lights. The view's quiet beauty stood in stark contrast to the tension inside the cabin. Her thoughts drifted to the purpose of her journey. The meeting waiting for her wasn't just another business discussion. It was about meaningful change. Sophia had spent years building a reputation as an advocate for equity and ethics. She had faced skepticism in boardrooms and endured the patronizing smiles of executives who underestimated her. Yet, she had always prevailed. This incident wasn't just a personal affront. It was a glaring example of the systemic issues she had dedicated her career to addressing. The sound of a rolling cart broke her thoughts. Another flight attendant, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, was offering drinks to the passengers. Sophia watched him closely, noting the warmth in his interactions with others. When he reached her row, his demeanor faltered slightly, a hesitation that didn't escape Sophia's notice. "Would you like something to drink, ma'am?" he asked, his tone courteous but cautious. Sophia studied him for a moment before replying, "Water, please." The man nodded, pouring a glass with practiced precision. As he handed it to her, his eyes lingered on her face, as though searching for something. I hope everything's all right, he said softly, almost as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. Sophia met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute. It will be, she replied. Sophia replied, her tone calm but firm. The flight attendant, who had introduced himself as Michael, nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He moved on, continuing his service, but Sophia could feel the weight of his brief words. It was a subtle acknowledgement, a silent agreement that what she had experienced wasn't right. As she sipped her water, Sophia felt a renewed sense of determination. The flight wasn't over yet, and neither was her fight. She carefully placed the glass on her tray table, her fingers brushing against her phone once more. Hours passed as the cabin grew quieter. Passengers began settling into their seats for the night. The dimmed lights cast a warm glow over the space, creating an air of calm. But Sophia remained wide awake, her posture poised. Sleep never came easily to her on flights, especially not after what had transpired. The blonde flight attendant, who had avoided Sophia since their last exchange, emerged from the galley. Her movements were quick and deliberate as she attended to other passengers. Sophia watched her silently, noting the practiced smile plastered back on her face. The attendant carefully avoided Sophia's row altogether, a clear indication of her intentions. This wasn't avoidance born of discomfort. It was arrogance. She didn't believe there would be consequences. She thought Sophia's complaints would remain just that, words spoken and forgotten. But Sophia wasn't the type to let things slide. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as she reached for her phone. Scrolling through her contacts, she stopped at the name she was searching for. Arthur Grayson, CEO of Horizon Airways. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a brief moment before she tapped it, her decision made. The phone rang once, twice, before a familiar voice answered. "Sophia?" Arthur said, his tone warm but slightly surprised. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you during your flight. Everything all right?" Sophia's lips curved into a faint smile at the sound of his voice. Over the years, they had built a strong professional relationship based on mutual respect. Arthur wasn't perfect, but he had always been willing to listen and adapt. "Arthur," she began, her voice steady but tinged with steel. "I'm afraid we have a situation." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Go on," he said, his tone shifting to one of concern. Sophia recounted the events of the flight in meticulous detail, her words measured and unyielding. She described the dismissive behavior, the microaggressions, and the blatant refusal of service. Arthur listened intently, interrupting only to ask clarifying questions. By the time she finished, his voice had taken on a hardened edge. "This is unacceptable," he said, his frustration evident. "You have my word, Sophia. This will be addressed immediately." Sophia nodded, though he couldn't see it. "Good," she replied. "I'm not looking for apologies, Arthur. I'm looking for action." "You'll have it," he promised. "I'll personally ensure that everyone involved is held accountable." Sophia ended the call with a sense of satisfaction, but knew this was only the beginning. Justice wasn't about words, it was about follow-through. She would be there every step of the way to ensure that the promised actions became reality. As the plane continued its journey through the night, Sophia leaned back in her seat, a quiet determination settling over her. The storm had begun, and there was no turning back. She placed her phone gently on the tray table, her movements precise, almost deliberate. The faint hum of the engines filled the silence around her, a backdrop to her simmering thoughts. She wasn't angry in the volatile, unrestrained way people might expect. No, her anger was colder, sharper, refined through years of experience. It was the kind of anger that drove action, not outbursts. The cabin remained dim, soft amber lights casting shadows across the seats. Most passengers were asleep now, their faces relaxed in peaceful oblivion. But Sophia was wide awake, her mind racing, each thought a calculated step toward holding people accountable. This wasn't just a personal affront. It was a test of the principles she fought to uphold. She glanced at her phone once more. The conversation with Arthur had been brief, but carried weight. His reaction was exactly what she'd expected. Outrage, mixed with a promise of swift action. But Sophia knew better than to rely on promises alone. She needed to follow up, to ensure that his words translated into meaningful change. The faint sound of footsteps drew her attention. It was the younger flight attendant, the one with dark hair and uncertain eyes. She was making her way down the aisle again, her steps hesitant as she approached Sophia's row. "Ma'am," the attendant said softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. The younger flight attendant's voice was barely audible over the hum of the plane. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, her nervous energy evident. Sophia straightened in her seat, her gaze steady. "Yes," she replied, her tone polite but firm. "I just wanted to apologize," the woman said, her words tumbling out quickly, "for how you've been treated. It's not right, and I didn't know how to handle it." Sophia studied her carefully, noting the genuine remorse in her expression. The apology wasn't rehearsed or perfunctory, it was raw, unpolished. But Sophia knew an apology alone wasn't enough. "What's your name?" Sophia asked, her voice measured. The attendant blinked, caught off guard. Emily Ward," she said hesitantly. "Emily," Sophia repeated, her tone softening slightly. "I appreciate your apology, but you need to understand something. Speaking up in moments like this isn't just about me, it's about setting a standard. If you see something wrong, you have a responsibility to address it." Emily nodded, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "You're right," she admitted. I should have said something sooner." "It's not too late," Sophia said simply, her gaze unwavering. "But it takes more than words. Actions matter." Emily seemed to absorb this, her expression thoughtful. "I'll remember that," she said quietly. "And I'm sorry again, truly." Sophia gave her a slight nod, signaling the end of the conversation. Emily lingered for a moment, then retreated, her steps more purposeful this time. Sophia watched her go, a faint flicker of hope stirring within her. Change often began with small, hesitant steps, and perhaps this was one of them. As the hours passed, Sophia's resolve only deepened. She observed the interactions between the other flight attendants and passengers, each exchange a reminder of the disparity in treatment she had experienced. The blonde flight attendant remained a ghost, carefully avoiding Sophia's row as though hoping she would fade into the background, forgotten amidst the routine of the flight. But Sophia Daniels was far from forgettable. Her thoughts were interrupted by the familiar chime over the intercom. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers, announcing the descent into the destination city. The cabin stirred as passengers began to wake, stretching and shifting in their seats. Sophia adjusted her blazer, her movements calm and deliberate. She was ready. As the plane touched down and taxied to the gate, her gaze remained fixed ahead. The blonde flight attendant finally reappeared, her demeanor as polished as ever as she moved through the cabin, thanking passengers for flying with Horizon Airways. When she reached Sophia's row, her smile faltered. The mask slipped, just slightly. "Thank you for flying with us," she said, her tone flat and devoid of the warmth she had shown to others. Sophia met her gaze, her expression cool. "I'll be sure to leave feedback," she said evenly, her words carrying an edge that made the attendant's cheeks flush. With that, Sophia rose from her seat, gathering her belongings with quiet efficiency. She moved through the cabin with her head held high, her heels clicking softly against the floor. The eyes of other passengers followed her, a mix of curiosity and respect in their gazes. As Sophia stepped off the plane and into the terminal, she felt the weight of what was to come. This wasn't just about her, it was about setting a precedent, ensuring no one else would have to endure what she had. Justice wasn't just an idea, it was an action, a ripple effect, capable of transforming systems and lives. Sophia pulled out her phone and dialed Arthur's number again. As the line connected, she stepped into the quiet of the terminal. "Arthur," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "Let's make this right." Sophia stepped into the sleek, glass-walled arrivals lounge of the airport. The muted sounds of conversations, rolling luggage, and occasional laughter created a hum of normalcy around her. Yet within her, a storm brewed. Quiet, but unrelenting. She clutched her phone tightly, replaying her earlier conversation with Arthur in her mind. His promise to address the incident had been firm, but Sophia knew better than to rely on words alone. Action was her domain, and she was prepared to ensure this wasn't swept under the rug. The sharp click of her heels against the polished floor echoed as she walked with purpose toward the car, waiting for her outside. During the descent, she had texted her assistant, Mia, giving her a brief account of the incident and instructions to prepare for a follow-up meeting with Arthur's team. Sophia didn't just want an apology, she wanted structural change. As the automatic doors parted and the cool night air swept over her, Sophia spotted a sleek black sedan parked at the curb. The driver, a tall man with a professional demeanor, stepped forward and opened the door for her. "Ms. Daniels," he greeted her with a slight nod. Sophia returned the gesture, slipping into the car's leather interior. She placed her bag beside her and exhaled slowly, her gaze fixed on the city lights flickering in the distance. Sophia's gaze remained fixed on the city lights flickering in the distance. The silent drive to her hotel gave her time to reflect on her next steps. The next morning, Sophia sat at a corner table in the hotel's executive lounge, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. The quiet rustle of newspapers and the occasional clink of cutlery filled the serene space. She had chosen this spot deliberately, secluded, yet offering a clear view of the room. Her laptop lay open, her notes from the previous day meticulously organized into a detailed report. At 9 a.m. sharp, her assistant, Mia, arrived, her usual calm demeanor tinged with curiosity. Mia carried a neatly arranged folder and a tablet tucked under her arm. "Good morning, Sophia," Mia said as she slid into the seat across from her. "I've gone through your notes. It's worse than I thought." Sophia nodded, her expression neutral. "It always is when you experience it firsthand," she replied. "But this time we have an opportunity to fix it." Mia opened the folder, revealing a printed summary of the airline's diversity and inclusion policies. "I cross-referenced their training manual with what you documented," she explained. "There's a significant gap between policy and practice. Their so-called inclusivity training is superficial at best." Sophia's gaze sharpened. "Then we address it at the root," she said firmly. "This isn't just about retraining, it's about accountability, starting with the crew." Mia hesitated, her brow furrowing. "Do you think Arthur will agree to disciplinary action? He might want to keep this quiet." Sophia's lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. "He doesn't have a choice. This isn't just about bad press, it's about the integrity of his company. If he won't act, I will." Mia nodded, her confidence in Sophia unwavering. "The meeting with his team is scheduled for 2 p.m., she said. "I'll finalize the materials." "Good," Sophia said, closing her laptop. "Make sure they understand this isn't negotiable." At precisely 2 p.m., Sophia entered the conference room at Horizon Airways headquarters. The space was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Arthur Grayson stood near the head of the table, his expression carefully neutral. Tall and in his late 40s, his tailored suit emphasized his commanding presence. "Sophia," he greeted, stepping forward to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming. I've read your report. It's troubling, to say the least." Sophia's grip was firm as she shook his hand. "I trust you've already begun addressing the issue," she said, taking her seat at the table. Arthur hesitated, his gaze flickering to the other executives seated around the room. "We've initiated an internal review," he said. "The flight crew involved is being questioned as we speak." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Questioned isn't enough," she said, her tone firm. "This isn't an isolated incident, Arthur. It's systemic. Your staff's behavior didn't happen in a vacuum. It's a product of a culture that tolerates discrimination." One of the executives, an older man with graying hair, cleared his throat, his posture defensive. "With all due respect, Ms. Daniels, we have a strong track record of diversity." Sophia cut him off with a sharp look. "A strong track record doesn't excuse complacency," she said. "Your policies may look good on paper, but they're meaningless if they aren't enforced." The room fell silent, tension palpable. Arthur leaned forward, his expression grave. "What do you propose?" he asked. Sophia opened the folder Mia had prepared, sliding a document across the table. "A comprehensive overhaul," she replied. "Mandatory inclusivity training for all employees, a transparent reporting system for complaints, and disciplinary measures for those who fail to uphold your standards." Arthur studied the document, his jaw tightening. "This will be costly," he said finally. "So is a lawsuit," Sophia countered evenly. "Or a PR crisis. You can't afford to ignore this, Arthur. Not if you want to stay ahead in this industry." The silence stretched as the executives absorbed her words. Sophia didn't flinch, her gaze unwavering. Finally, Arthur exhaled and nodded. "You're right," he said. "We'll implement your recommendations, and the flight crew involved will face immediate consequences." Sophia inclined her head slightly, her satisfaction tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. "Good," she said. "I'll be following up to ensure progress." As the meeting concluded, Sophia stood, gathering her things. Arthur approached her as the other executives filed out, his expression softening. "Sophia," he said quietly, "thank you for holding us accountable. It's not easy, but it's necessary." Sophia met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "It's not about ease, Arthur," she said. "It's about doing what's right." With that, she turned and walked out of the room, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Justice, Sophia knew, wasn't a single act. It was a continuous effort. And she wasn't done yet. Her steps echoed through the marble corridors of the airline's headquarters as she exited into the crisp, cool air outside. The cool breeze brushed against Sophia's skin as she stepped into the bustling city. Cars honked in the distance, and people hurried along, their lives seemingly untouched by the storm brewing within Sophia's world. For most, it was just another day. For Sophia, it marked the start of a reckoning. Her driver was waiting by the curb, the black sedan's sleek body glinting under the afternoon sun. With a practiced motion, he opened the door, and Sophia slid into the seat, setting her bag beside her. She didn't immediately give him a destination. Instead, she sat in contemplative silence, her fingers lightly drumming on her knee as she stared out the window. "Back to the hotel, Miss Daniels?" the driver asked, breaking the quiet. Sophia considered for a moment, her gaze fixed on the skyline. "Not yet," she replied. "Take me to Riverside Park. I need some air." The driver nodded without hesitation, guiding the car smoothly into traffic. Sophia leaned back in her seat, her thoughts racing. The meeting with Arthur and his team had gone as expected, full of commitments and promises of change. But Sophia knew promises could be hollow, dissipating under the weight of convenience and resistance. She needed more than words, she needed proof. Riverside Park was a small oasis amid the urban chaos. Its winding paths were bordered by manicured gardens and towering trees. As the car rolled to a stop, Sophia stepped out, instructing the driver to wait. Her heels clicked softly on the stone pathway as she walked, the noise absorbed by the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. She found a secluded bench near a small fountain. The water bubbled in a soothing rhythm, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside her. Sitting down, Sophia pulled out her phone and opened her emails. Mia had already sent a follow-up, detailing the next steps and summarizing Arthur's verbal commitments. Sophia skimmed the message, her mind already analyzing the angles. Her gaze shifted to the fountain, watching the sunlight ripple across its surface. The moment's tranquility clashed with the resolve coursing through her. It wasn't anger she felt, she had processed that emotion long ago. What remained was a steely determination, honed over years of battles fought and won. She glanced at her phone again and opened her contact list, scrolling until she found the name she needed: Claire Benton. Horizon Airways Chief Human Resources Officer. Sophia hesitated for a brief second before dialing. The phone rang twice before Claire's clipped, efficient voice answered. "Sophia," Claire said. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon." "I like to move quickly," Sophia replied, her tone calm but firm. "I need an update on the internal review, specifically regarding the flight crew." Claire sighed, and the faint sound of papers rustling echoed over the line. "It's still in progress," she said, "but the preliminary findings show a lack of adherence to training protocols. We're addressing it." "That's not enough," Sophia said, her lips tightening. "You and I both know this isn't just about training, it's about accountability. What measures are you taking to ensure this doesn't happen again?" There was a pause on the other end. When Claire spoke again, her tone was more measured. "We're considering disciplinary action for the individuals involved," she said. "And we're reviewing our hiring and training practices. It's going to take time, Sophia." "I understand that change isn't instantaneous," Sophia said, her voice steady. "But time isn't an excuse for inaction. I'll be watching closely, Claire. This isn't going away." Claire didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her tone was subdued. "Noted," she said. "I'll keep you updated." Sophia ended the call and leaned back against the bench, her eyes drifting once more to the fountain. She knew Claire's reluctance stemmed from more than logistics. Change was uncomfortable, especially when it threatened entrenched systems. But Sophia wasn't here to make anyone comfortable. That evening, Sophia sat in her hotel room, the city lights twinkling outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. The room was quiet, save for the occasional hum of traffic below. She had ordered room service but barely touched the meal. Her thoughts were too preoccupied to focus on food. Her laptop sat open on the desk, emails pouring in as news of the incident began spreading through the airline's upper ranks. A message from Arthur caught her eye. She opened it, scanning the words quickly. Subject: update on today's discussion. Sophia, I want to thank you again for bringing this matter to our attention. We've initiated a full-scale review and are expediting the disciplinary process for those involved. Additionally, I've approved the immediate implementation of your recommendations. You have my word that this will be handled with the utmost seriousness. Best regards, Arthur Grayson. Sophia read the email twice, her expression impassive. It was a step in the right direction, but she knew better than to take it at face value. Actions, not words, would determine if this was the start of true change. She closed her laptop, her gaze returning to the skyline. The battle wasn't over, but momentum was on her side. Sophia read Arthur's email twice, her expression impassive. It was a good start, but she knew better than to take it at face value. Follow-through was everything. Closing her laptop, Sophia stood and walked to the window. The city stretched before her, vibrant and alive, a testament to resilience and growth. She crossed her arms, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. The air in the conference room was thick with tension as Sophia took her seat at the long glass table. Across from her sat Arthur Grayson, his typically composed demeanor showing signs of strain. To his right was Claire Benton, the Chief Human Resources Officer, meticulously flipping through a stack of documents. The remaining executives avoided Sophia's gaze, their unease palpable. Sophia placed her bag on the table and leaned back, her posture calm but commanding. I assume you've completed your review, she said, her voice even but laced with expectation. Arthur exchanged a glance with Claire before nodding. Yes, Sophia. The investigation was thorough and the findings are clear. Claire will present the details. Claire cleared her throat, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. After conducting interviews with the flight crew and reviewing past passenger complaints, we've identified a pattern of unprofessional behavior, particularly by the lead flight attendant, Sarah Ellis. She paused, her gaze shifting to Sophia. Miss Ellis's actions on your flight were not only discriminatory, but emblematic of a broader failure to uphold our values. Further investigation revealed multiple prior complaints against her, complaints that were mishandled by management. Sophia's jaw tightened, her composure unshaken, though frustration flickered in her eyes. And what are the consequences? She asked, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. Claire straightened, clasping the folder in front of her. Sarah Ellis has been terminated, effective immediately. Her blatant disregard for company policy and repeated offenses leave no room for remediation. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Sophia's gaze didn't waver. And the rest of the crew? She pressed. Claire continued, her tone more measured. 2 members of the crew who supported or enabled her behavior have also been terminated. Their failure to intervene or report the incident made them complicit. A 3rd crew member, Emily Ward, expressed genuine remorse and has voluntarily stepped forward to assist with developing a more inclusive training program. She will remain under probation while her contributions are evaluated. Sophia allowed the silence to stretch, studying the room. She could see the discomfort etched on the executives' faces, the weight of accountability pressing down on them. And the systemic issues? She asked finally, her gaze shifting to Arthur. Arthur leaned forward, his voice firm. We've approved the immediate implementation of your recommendations. Every employee will undergo mandatory inclusivity training, starting with the leadership team. We're also overhauling our complaint handling system to ensure transparency and accountability. Sophia nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Good, she said. But this is just the beginning. Changing policies is one thing. Changing culture is another. I'll be watching to make sure your actions match your words. Arthur met her gaze, his discomfort giving way to sincerity. "You have my word, Sophia," he said. "This will not happen again." As Sophia left the headquarters, her mind lingered on the decisions made in that room. Sarah Ellis and her enablers had been held accountable. Their arrogance and complacency had led to their downfall. It wasn't personal, it was justice. Their terminations weren't just about punishment. They were a message to the entire organization that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. The city buzzed with life as Sophia stepped into her waiting car. She glanced out the window, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. This battle was over, but the fight for justice was ongoing. Sophia knew the road ahead would be long, but she had never been one to shy away from a challenge. As the car pulled away, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. This wasn't just a victory for her, it was a victory for everyone who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or made to feel invisible. And Sophia, as always, was ready for the next fight. The day after the meeting felt lighter, though the gravity of the past few days remained with Sophia. Sitting in her hotel room, she gazed out at the sprawling cityscape, sunlight reflecting off towering glass buildings. The events played over in her mind, not as a burden, but as a reminder of what persistence and accountability could achieve. Her phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Mia. "The press release is live. I think you'll want to see this." Sophia opened her laptop and navigated to Horizon Airways' official website. There it was, front and center. Commitment to equity and accountability, a message from the CEO. Sophia clicked on the link, her eyes scanning the carefully worded paragraphs. Arthur Grayson acknowledged the incident, without naming her directly, as a failure to uphold the airline's values and standards. He outlined the immediate actions taken: the termination of Sarah Ellis and other complicit crew members, the implementation of new inclusivity training, and a revamped complaint handling process. The tone was direct and unflinching. This wasn't just damage control, it was a genuine promise for change. Sophia leaned back in her chair, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. It wasn't perfect, no single action ever was, but it was progress. Later that afternoon, Sophia met Mia for coffee at a quiet cafe near her hotel. Mia arrived with her usual efficiency, carrying a slim briefcase and a neatly organized folder. Sliding into the chair across from Sophia, her expression was a mix of excitement and determination. "You've seen the statement?" Mia asked, setting the folder on the table. Sophia nodded, sipping her coffee. "I have. It's a good start." Mia opened the folder, revealing a draft of the airline's new inclusivity policy. "Arthur's team worked quickly on this," she said. "They're implementing your recommendations almost verbatim, and they've asked for you to join the advisory board overseeing the changes." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "An advisory board?" Mia nodded. "They want to ensure the policies stick, and they know your name adds credibility." Sophia considered this for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. She wasn't in it for accolades or titles, but if her involvement could push the changes further, she wasn't opposed. "I'll accept," she said finally, "but only if I have real influence. I won't be a figurehead." Mia smiled, clearly expecting that response. "I'll make sure the terms reflect that." That evening, Sophia found herself walking through Riverside Park, the same place she had visited after her initial meeting with Arthur. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the trees and pathways. She stopped near the fountain, its gentle bubbling filling the quiet. On a nearby bench sat a young black woman, her expression thoughtful as she scrolled through her phone. Sophia couldn't help but notice the determination in her posture, the quiet strength she recognized in herself. As Sophia walked past, the woman glanced up and smiled. "Hi," she said warmly. Sophia paused, returning the smile. "Hi. I saw your name in the news," the woman continued, her tone a mix of awe and gratitude. "What you did with the airline, it's inspiring, thank you." Sophia's chest tightened, a mix of pride and humility washing over her. "Thank you," she replied softly. "But there's still work to do." The woman nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. "There always is." Sophia continued walking, her steps lighter now. The conversation stayed with her, a reminder of the ripple effect her actions could create. It wasn't just about policies or press releases. It was about people, about changing lives and perceptions. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Sophia felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had fought for justice and won, not just for herself, but for everyone who needed to see that change was possible. And she was ready for the next challenge. That's how Sophia Daniels turned a moment of injustice into a powerful example of accountability and change. Her courage reminds us all that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always necessary. What did you think of Sophia's story? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.